Rescued is a podcast of conversations with rescuers and those who've been rescued. It's about the lessons we learn about ourselves, the places we go and why, without judgment or shame, to help us have better adventures, manage risk and deal with the unexpected. According to the World Health Organization, roughly 1 to 2 people die from snakebite in Australia each year. The good news is this is significantly lower than the 1920s, when the Sydney Morning Herald reported around 13 people were dying each year. Today, we hear from Joyce, who bucks modern statistics, which tell us that 74% of victims are male, with an average age of 46, and interestingly, with around 54% of those bites happening at home. She's joined by her friend Frances, and together they share the story of what happened when, along a spectacular Grade 5 track, over 3 hours from the nearest road, she describes what felt like a sharp stick hit her ankle. Let's start with you, Joyce. How do you know Frances?
Well, I've been very privileged to know Frances through the Bushwalking Club, SBW.
SBW. So what does that stand for?
Sydney Bushwalkers.
And have you been a member of the club for a while?
So I think I joined in June 2016.
So you've been in the club, that's about 8 years.
Yep.
And for people who aren't familiar with clubs, I might even ask Frances, so what is a bushwalking club? What does it exist for, and what does it what does it look like?
Well, the Sydney Bushwalkers is a volunteer-based leading kind of club. So you join and then you have to do qualifying walks and some other little bits and pieces as well. But the walks are led by the people that are actually in the club, and you get to sort of go to places that you would never have dreamt that you could go to on your own or even know about.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky that I joined 12 years ago now. And a lot of the older people in the club that aren't there any longer sort of took me to places that I'd never been before. So then I could then take other people there.
Yeah.
Which is really great. So you get to meet a whole community and see places that you would just never dream existed before then.
So clubs sound a pretty amazing place to meet like-minded people with a similar interest. And I love that idea of passing down the knowledge and passing on the traditions and the ways of doing things. So apart from being taken to places that you probably may not see on the internet or on all trails and all those kind of things, you're seeing different places, you're being taken different places. What else does a club sort of teach you or equip you for?
You learn a lot from the people around you, always, navigation-wise, how to read a landscape. When you're out there with a bunch of people, maybe that you hadn't met before, and someone will, even on overnight camps or whatever, you just learn so much, like, oh, you've got that, like, great idea. Why didn't I ever think of that before? And, and you can pass on knowledge as well, which is really fun.
Yeah. So, Joyce, I'm thinking it's things like, how to pack or what to take with you, and how to, maybe look at the weather or all that kind of thing. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember when I first joined, I didn't realise that not only did we have to do qualifying walks, but we actually had to do this skills day.
Oh.
And during the skills day, like, they literally took you around how to pack your pack for an overnight, how to read a map, and they took us through quite a few things, even first aid. I think there was a bit of a food thing on, like, how to pack for what to take with food and things like that. So that was really fun. And I had, past experiences before I did that skills day, but I just loved how they actually have that as part of their qualifying experience for every person who wants to join, because I think it sets a standard of, how things should be done, and why do they do it? Because they want to make sure everyone's safe.
I think for people who maybe haven't heard about clubs before, it might be a whole new concept, a way of entering into the bush or getting used to the bush and learning how to do the bush, or learning how to be in the bush. So you said, but you came into the club with some skills. So have you always been a bushwalker or a hiker, Joyce?
Pretty much growing up in high school, Mum and Dad used to take us always to the mountains on a Saturday. So that was something that we used to do as a family. So it was really fun and exciting. And I kind of grew up just loving the outdoors. But high school was where it actually clicked. I remember year 11 PDHPE. We did an outdoor rec component for our PDHPE unit of study. And that's when I was like, this is life.
Yeah.
When we fully went and did a big outdoor expedition. And I remember coming back home and saying, this is what I want to do.
And what about you, Frances? Have you come from a background in the bush?
No, I wouldn't say that, even though I grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney and it was pretty bushy out there. But, I grew up in the time where, you got locked outside until the sun went down and then you came inside. I didn't really get into bushwalking until I was rowing at Sydney Uni, and one of the women that I became friends with there lived in Wentworth Falls. And when we were rowing up on the Nepean or at the Penrith Rowing Centre, we would often go to Wentworth Falls and stay with her. And then we'd, go on the National Pass and Darwin's Walk. Before Darwin's Walk was all paved, it was all sort of bushy. And I used to think that was the all of bushwalking that there was. It was just Wentworth Falls and nothing else. But we went there a lot, and that was what sort of got me into being out there and loving the big open spaces and the views and, the challenge of walking around for several hours on different terrains and things instead of just, on a footpath.
Yeah, very different. So Wentworth Falls, we're talking about the Blue Mountains in New South Wales here.
Yes.
So have you both walked in the mountains quite a lot before this experience that we're going to talk about in a little while? Joyce, have you spent much time walking in the mountains?
Not as much as I'd like to. So pretty much that year, which was 2023, I had done quite a few walks, and I think particularly in that same area where we were walking, that was probably the 5th trip for that year.
Oh, wow. Just to give everyone an idea of the amount of time you get out in the bush, because some people might be, occasional bushwalkers, maybe once or twice a year, but that sounds like that's not the case. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So that I walk pretty much weekly.
So every weekend you're out in the bush somewhere.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Amazing. And are those day walks or overnighters, Frances?
Oh, I prefer the overnighters, but I do lots of day walks every weekend. I'm either out with Sydney bushwalkers doing an overnight walk, or I'll be with Joyce and co doing a day walk somewhere in the Blue Mountains.
A Joyce and co with a day walk somewhere in the Blue Mountains. It all sounds pretty wonderful. Now, so take me to this particular day that we're going to talk about in this trip. Was this a day walk or an overnight walk, Joyce?
This was a day walk. This was a training walk.
A training walk. Explain to us what a training walk is.
So it was pretty much us keeping ourselves fit, because we were heading in, literally heading overseas not long after to do a pack walk. So we thought we'll get a bit of training, a bit of scrambling, and hopefully, keep our baseline fitness.
And tell me a bit about the walk. What was a day walk, and how many hours would you have expected to be on your feet?
I reckon around 6. Am I right, Frances?
Yeah, 6, 7 with breaks, perhaps. Yeah.
So who wants to tell me about the walk, and was it a club walk or a Joyce and co, Frances and co walk, just a bunch of friends? How did the plan for the day come together?
Well, I feel like it was a day walk in our backyard, really, because it was a walk we had done more times than I can possibly remember, down the Golden Stairs and up the Corriwall Knife Edge, and we were just going to have, a sandwich on a rock, being Melville's Lookout. And we had done it, I can't remember how many times before, because it is a good climb. And it sort of gives you everything. 2 climb, 1 climb down, 1 climb up, and then down and back up again. And, yeah, it's around the corner from where I live now in Katoomba. So we're all pretty familiar with meeting up at Narraneck Lookout and taking off for Mount Solitary. And we did have our New Zealand group plus one extra, didn't we? Because we had Hugh and Luke and Joe. Yeah. So there was 5 of us all together.
5 in the group. That sounds like a good number for a group size. Tell me about the walk itself then. So Mount Solitary. Joyce, can you tell me a little bit about that for people who may never have seen it, just in terms of where it might be near other icons that they might be familiar with in the area?
Yeah, so if anyone's been to the Blue Mountains or to Katoomba Lookout, when you're actually standing at the lookout, you see this big rock right in front of you. It's this big rock, and it's green, lots of trees on it, and literally that is Mount Solitary. You can't miss it. It's huge, and there are a couple of ways to actually get there that are all on track walks. And so our aim was to actually make our way to Mount Solitary via Narraneck.
Okay. So when you say Katoomba Lookout, so this is that main the tourist one, Echo Point, is it, with the 3 sisters?
That's the one.
Okay.
It glows at night, the one that's lit at night.
Yes, indeed. Okay. So you said it's massive, this rock, this sort of like stands up, like its name says, Mount Solitary. So Frances, how many, just roughly, do you know how many kilometres across the top, like the length from that view it is?
I think it's about 3, from the Corrawall back to the East Col, which is the other end of it. And there's several ups and downs. There's a distinct track that goes right the way through, but there's quite a bit of rock climbing and, and going down into Chinaman's Gully, which is the first one from the Corrawall edge. It's not flat. There's lots of ups and downs, and it's not really considered a super easy walk, but it is an easy walk.
Do you happen to know what the Australian walking track grading system grade for that walk would be?
I think they rate that a 5, a difficult, because if you go right across the top, coming down the East Col, there is some tricky bits there.
So kind of like a big tabletop feature out in the middle, and it's 3 kilometres across the top of this table. But not flat. Okay, so I'm building a picture here. And tell me, what time of year was it, Joyce? Was it in the weather on the day?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, 16th of December, 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Hot. It was over 30 degrees. It felt like it was over 30 degrees. It was a very hot day.
So what kind of stuff were you carrying with you? So there's the 5 of you there, and you all knew you were all experienced and training and fit. What kind of stuff did you have with you?
Okay, so I carry my day pack with me all year round. I don't do any changes other than what I put in as food. It's the only thing that changes each time. So in that pack, it's pretty much got my first aid kit. That's a must. I actually carry a trowel with me as well. I also carry with me it's kind of like an InReach.
Yep, like a Garmin, one of those send.
Yeah, the Garmin ones. Yep. So that's always with me as well. I also carry with me hydrolytes, which is part of the first aid kit. I carry with me 2 snake bandages all year round as well. Plenty of water and, of course, food. And in winter, I sometimes also pack just a spare thermals and wet weather gear.
Yeah, absolutely. And Frances, would you say you had pretty much the same or anything different to that?
Oh, no, nothing different to that. Very much exactly the same. You get a routine together. The bag just has the same things in it all the time.
Nice. Saves on packing. Makes it easy.
Oh, yeah. It just goes in the cupboard and comes back out. Like Joyce said, it's food and water that goes in.
So take me to the start of the day. Take me to the morning you've got yourselves out to Narraneck Lookout, to where you were meeting up and starting. Talk me through what happens next. What's the next couple of hours looking like for you?
Oh, I think we're all in a really good mood at that stage, because we had New Zealand to look forward to, and Christmas was coming up, and I think Joyce had finished work. She had 1 day left or whatever. So I remember Joyce being in a particularly good mood to be out and on the trail. And it was really beautiful early morning. It was quite cool at that stage. And, of course, the beginning is all going downhill. So everyone's always in a good mood when you're going downhill. And when you get onto the track, it's got a beautiful canopy over it, so it's quite cool. And it's just, and there's lyrebirds, and it's just quite nice to be down there. And I can remember us all just, being in such a great mood and taking off and, looking forward to just being out for the day.
Sort of a bounce in the step at the start of the day, hey?
It was, yes.
And Joyce, how would you describe to someone who's never seen that type of habitat that you're walking through? How would you describe that?
It's just really fresh air. It's just that real crisp fresh air that you don't see in, Sydney. It was a really clear day. I just remember just, setting off, and it was just very fresh. Yes, it was going to be a very, very hot day, but when we first started out, it smelt good. It felt good.
What kind of environment? Is it sort of eucalypt forest or rainforest or somewhere in between, or bits of both?
There is quite a lot of rainforest there because you're down the side of a plateau called Narrowneck. And over the last few years, we've had a lot of rain, and a lot of landslips coming down and over the track. So parts of it can be quite damp. There's quite a lot of trees, and the national parks have done a great job of sort of cutting steps into big trees and making it sort of quite interesting as you go along. And you do have to sort of watch your way a little bit, and they're still working on it now, trying to make that track accessible again after more rain and more landslides that have happened recently.
So you walk past a couple of other features on the way towards Mount Solitary, which at this stage, based on what you were saying, it sounds like it's kind of looming in front of you a little bit, because you've gone down, you're going to have to start going up again. So Joyce, take us into that space when you're at the base of Mount Solitary.
Yeah, so we pretty much passed the downhill part, and then we get to where the climb started, and I just remember just looking up going, oh, knife's edge. Not this again. But we started the climb, and we're all in conversation. Everyone's, catching up for the week or the two, or how long we haven't seen each other for, and we kept going, and it's a kind of cool section because there's a bit of that scramble where you've got to climb up a few sections.
So it's sort of not like rock climbing technically, but it's pretty serious rock scrambling through sort of narrow slots and boulders and things like that, isn't it?
Yes.
And so what happens next?
Just as we got to the top, I think it was once you get to the top and it starts to plateau again, there's a really nice kind of big rocks where you can just sit in and see it's a really nice section up there.
Yeah. What do you see from up there, Frances?
Well, you can see all of the Jamison Valley, and you look across to Katoomba, and also you're sort of looking directly across at another part that comes off Narrowneck called Castle Head. And you can, from that, the view from up there is really something else, and especially at that sort of mid-morning kind of time, there's a mist over the mountains that is really lovely to see. And you do get up just high enough to be able to look down over both sides because you're sort of looking directly back at another little group of rocks called the Ruin Castle.
It's just, it sounds magical. So you had morning tea. What happened then?
We ready to continue on to our lunch destination.
Great. Well, everything's sounding like it's going pretty well so far, Joyce.
Yep.
And what time was this?
Oh, it would have been around 10:30.
So you're starting to move sort of along the flat area at the top then, yeah?
Correct, yes.
Take me through what happened.
So I remember very clearly that I was at the front for a bit. I was leading the pack and I took them in a little bit of a wrong direction accidentally, and then I just got called back going, Joyce, you're going the wrong way. And I'm like, oh, sorry. And then I just ended up tucking away in a different line number.
I'm getting the sense that this isn't a story about being lost in the bush.
No, it was quite funny because I was behind Joyce, and where she went off, it's like everybody does that. Was very minor, but it was just enough time for me to go, the track's over here, and like took 3 or 4 steps, and then I was ahead of Joyce, and then Joe came in behind me, and we were still on a very distinct track. And there was just like a pile of sticks on the track, absolutely nothing you would even think twice about. So I stepped over them, kept going. Joe stepped over them and kept going. And then Joyce stepped over them.
What happened when you stepped over the sticks?
I think I stepped on the stick. I must have stepped on something because something just then launched at me on my left side.
Right. Is it completely out of the blue? And you're on a track, though. You're not in scrub or anything like that.
Low-level scrub. It was a very plain track with just a little pile of sticks. You wouldn't even look at it twice. And then all of a sudden Joyce yelled out, "That stick jumped out at me. That really hurt."
Yeah, Joyce. So explain to me or tell me what you remember from that moment.
Yeah, so literally I was in conversation. I felt I stepped on something, and then all of a sudden something just launched at my left ankle. And it felt like it was a rock. It was as if like some rock just went smacking at my left ankle. And then when I looked down, I saw 2 puncture marks. And that's when I was like, I think I got bitten by a snake.
Right. Can you remember what you were feeling or what went through your mind at that time?
I just remember going, okay, this is the worst thing that could ever happen, because now I've got to stop. I can't do anything. And I've got to strap it. Like the first thing I came to my mind was like, oh my gosh, I've got to sit down and I've got to strap this thing because I don't want the venom to make its way into my body. And that's the first thing that came to my mind. And I was very, very fortunate to have everyone say, sit down quickly, sit down.
We're actually Googling what do snake bites look like.
Yes.
Reception. And we're taking photos of her ankle and then comparing phones. Like, yep, that looks like a snake bite.
Wow. And so did you see anything moving in the ground or anything like that?
No. Even Hugh went back to have a look to see if anything looked that had 2, like even if it's a stick, had 2 things that would like penetrate in that way, and there was nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Massive thanks for the support from the team at Paddy Palin, who since 1930 have been leaders in travel and outdoor adventure. In fact, did you know that Paddy himself, a member of the Sydney Bushwalkers Club, was a volunteer in the original search and rescue arm of the Federation of Bushwalking Clubs in New South Wales? Nice one, Paddy. So we're now at what time of day? Is this about 11 o'clock-ish?
Sure was.
Right. And the fact that you said, oh, I need to strap it, I need to sit down and I can't do anything, where did that knowledge or that understanding come from?
Well, I had just finished a first aid course a week before, and Jo had just done her first aid training as well. So it was weird, like I think everybody kind of like just went into action to go, okay, like this is serious, sit down, you can't move now.
And so how did you each decide who was doing what? And because there's different roles and different tasks that would happen, aren't there?
Well, I think Jo was very decisive and just started getting everybody's snake bandages out and just ripped her shoe off and started bandaging straight away. I think Luke was the one that said, well, if we're treating it as a suspected snake bite, who's calling emergency? And I think Joyce then stopped Googling what snake bites look like and dialed 000 straight away. Meanwhile, I think, I was assisting Jo with the, wrapping of the leg from one end to the other. And, that's kind of how it went. And then Joyce was on the phone then because they're so fast. So there was lots of phone conversations.
And I think one of the really interesting things there is knowing the capabilities of the people you're walking with and knowing you can trust and you can rely on them when or if something does go wrong. And I'm a member of bushwalking clubs as well, and that knowledge, knowing that the people have got my back and that they come with a certain level of first aid training themselves, a certain amount of skills. Whereas sometimes I wonder when people just meet up in groups online or, and I'm not saying they don't have the skills, but these are all strangers and you meet up and it's great because you're building community out there, but can you rely on these people?
It's made me realise how important your group is, how important the people are. And even though, you might not know the people that you're going out with that well, but I think, because it's the Sydney Bushwalkers is such a community, you would take for granted that they would be able to handle a situation. And having come a cropper myself a few times, it's always very comforting to have people around you that want the best for you and want to help you as much as possible. Just always so grateful when something happens to you that, the people around you are there for you. It's just so important.
Let's break it down a bit. So, Joyce, you made the call yourself, did you?
I did, yep. I was on that phone, sitting down, getting my leg bandaged, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, 000, going, ambulance, please.
Yeah, and how long do you think that took between the snake bite to when the bandage was going on and you were making that call?
I think it was minutes, not even, I think 3 minutes.
So there's 5 in the party. Joyce is on the ground. Francis and Joe are ripping out snake bandages. Now, you said, Joyce, that you carry 2 bandages with you.
Yes.
Is that standard for the people that you walk with?
Interesting you say that because when I first joined the club 8 years ago, a particular leader literally had on his email to say to join my walk, you need to have a minimum of 2 snake bandages with you.
What did you think about that at the time?
At the time, I was like, seriously, 2?
Now, these are, when you say snake bandages, can you just explain what might be different between a snake bandage and your normal everyday roller crepe bandage?
Like the snake bandages that I've got, once you stretch them, by stretching them how far you need to actually have it. It just tells you how tight you need to actually have it wrapped around you. So it's an indicator.
Cool, because none of us who head out in the bush with a first aid course are experts in, everything. We're not paramedics. We're not doctors. So snake bandages, you had 2. And so in the party, how many bandages do you think you had in the group of 5?
We would have had 6. I think Joyce was the only one with 2. I think I only carry 1.
So you sat down, you didn't move other than picking up your phone. People were treating you. We're talking very much about the physical side of things here. What was going through your head and your heart at this point? What was happening down here?
I was at peace and I knew like whatever God had for me that day, I knew it was for my own good. And I guess that's my own personal faith that I carry in all situations. And on that particular day, I defaulted to that.
It's nice to have somewhere in here in your heart and in your mind that you can go when it all goes to poo. You've got somewhere to go. So what was the other people doing in the group? So we've got Joe and Francis on bandages. What about, so there was another 2 people. What were they doing?
They were around, helping out. Just keeping everybody pretty much happy, I guess, and not bored, and we're still in conversation and still able to chat. So I think it was just good to have the company.
So you rang 000, you made the first call. Talk to me about how that went. What happened?
I remember having to say to them, I'm not close to a road, because at one stage they said, we're going to have a team coming in to walk you out. I'm like, well, I can't move. It's a snake bite. So I had to kind of remember reiterating that a few times to them, saying, no, I can't walk out. And I remember even Hugh taking the phone and saying, she can't walk out. She's, it's a suspected snake bite. And we're about 7 kilometres from the fire trail. And there's a big climb. She won't be able to come out.
Okay, so Hugh's on the phone, you've been on the phone. So once you start getting that information across and sharing it, what kind of things are they asking you? Can you remember?
Yeah, absolutely. They asked me age. They asked how old I was. They asked like how I was feeling. I remember they asked for symptoms. They pretty much ask you a lot of personal questions as well. You know, they even asked me for my weight. So they asked me quite a few questions, and I even sent a photo of the snake bite.
And of course, the location. There was lots of what 3 words. And I think in the end, I took a screenshot of, the memory maps and where we were, and actually sent them that as well. So they had a pretty good idea of exactly where we were.
Yeah, great. So memory maps is a navigation app, is it?
It's one of them. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So that came in handy, because I don't know that the what 3 words was that successful, although that did go through once, didn't it? There was, yeah.
Yeah, it did. And to be honest, being the person injured at the time, I kind of was so thankful that I had people around me, because when they asked me for my location and the exact location, I didn't even think to go to my emergency app and find the coordinates.
Because, yeah, there's a lot of jobs that are being done now by a group of 5 people that it really brings home the value of walking with a group when something like this happens.
Yes, and walking with a diverse group as well, that people, we all bring something different, to the table. And Joe then ended up pulling out one of those bright orange bivy bags because it was hot. So I think Hugh and Luke were being Joyce's personal slaves, with holding the orange bivy bag like a canopy over the top of her. And that also came in really handy for the helicopter to spot us, because there was a lot of, there wasn't massive tree cover, but there was enough to make us a little bit obscure. But the big orange bivy bag, and all 4 of us were waving it around when the helicopter came over, made it quite easy for them to spot us. So that's actually something new that's gone into my day pack now, is one of those orange bivy bags, because they're so easily spotted and they are light and just handy to have.
Yeah, and they're tiny. They're only smaller than a fist.
Yes, they are. Yeah. But that little piece of kit was, I don't know what we would have waved around had Joe not very cleverly pulled that out. So it had a double purpose of keeping her cool, as well as being a great colour beacon for the helicopter.
Absolutely. So just taking a step backward here, so you had phone coverage. So I've been up to Mount Solitary. There's sort of patchy coverage here and there across the top. It has been improving over the years. So you were able to actually talk to someone, and then, you said they asked all these questions, and then in terms of that location. So you mentioned there the emergency app. So talk to me, Joyce, about the Emergency Plus app.
Yeah, so I've got that downloaded also on my phone, and so you can actually call from that or share your coordinates.
Right, and that, I think, has the what 3 words system in it as well.
Oh, they give you your coordinates, isn't it? But they use 3 words instead.
So, yeah, my understanding with what 3 words is that it's an English company, so it's a private company. A guy came up with the idea that you lay a 3 metre by 3 metre grid over the whole planet, and each of these 3 metre square grids is identified by 3 words instead of using long strings of numbers like you might get in latitude, longitude, or in grid references like we use in bushwalking. So it's great if people struggle numerically or with long detailed of numbers, and especially in a crisis situation. So imagine if you had this big long string of numbers of latitude, longitude on your screen, you're trying to read out the numbers, and it would be really easy when your heart rate's racing, you're going through a bit of shock, and to transpose some of those numbers. So yeah, the what 3 words, and it comes in many languages around the world. So that's been rolled out as a piece of licensed product into the Emergency Plus app here in Australia. So yeah, but it's now used all around the world, which apparently is proving really well. But how did it feel knowing that you had got through and that help was on the way. What did that do for how you were feeling?
Oh my goodness. I was so relieved. I just realised how privileged I was in a country that had the system in place, and I've never experienced anything like it. So I was like, wow, like I'm actually getting help, and help is on its way. It was good.
It's like you were in a lot of pain. You were very uncomfortable because we were all making her stay so still that she couldn't, and you're sitting on the dirt and, like with two legs stretched out, and her ankle really started to, she's pins and needles, I think you said first, but then a really horrible ache from where the bite actually was. She kept thinking that the bandages were too tight. We just kept jollying her along, saying, oh, look, when they get here, they might take them off for you. And she's going, okay. She's all calm. And Joyce was calm, but she's forgotten how much pain she actually was in.
Yeah, you're right, Frances. I was in a lot of pain, and I felt really nauseous as well. Yeah.
What else were you experiencing?
It was just the pins and needles, extreme pain on the actual bite area, and literally just feeling quite like the nausea got worse when I got in the helicopter.
So how long until the helicopter arrived from the first call until you heard that sound, and what did that feel like?
I think it was like not more than an hour. It's funny because I record every walk I do, and this particular walk I didn't press stop. So it's actually marked my, lift out in the air all the way to the hospital. It's kind of like, recorded the whole trip. So, yeah, I remember it was like an hour, the whole thing.
Wow.
Like I know I was at the hospital.
It's an incredible system. So talk to me about the helicopter approaching and what was that like?
It was surreal having them, just come out of the sky and drop down and come over and he was so kind and patient with Joyce. You couldn't have asked for a nicer person. And sadly she went, that's really hurting, and he sort of tested the bandage and he went, yeah, no, it's not coming off. And she was like, oh.
So he winched down. Did the helicopter stay around, and was all your stuff blowing around? Explain, Joyce, what did that feel like when the helicopter is really close and overhead?
Yeah, so no, he had to actually fly. They had to winch him down 30 metres from where we were. So he had to actually hike, do a bit of hiking himself to get over to where we were. But as soon as they let him down, they left. And he used all of us. Every single one of us had a job. Then when he was ready to actually winch me up with all his gear, someone had to carry things. Someone had to help me being carried with him.
We had to carry Joyce the 30 metres back to where the helicopter could actually winch them out. She was just lucky that we had people that actually were strong enough to carry somebody.
And you said you all had jobs to do. So
yeah,
what did you all get to do?
Carry me?
Carry some of his stuff who weren't carrying Joyce.
What did he do? When talk to me, you said he did his assessment. What does that look like from a patient's perspective? And then it'd be also interesting to hear from Frances what you observed of what was going on. Because were you close by and sort of seeing and hearing what was happening?
Oh yeah, we're all sort of gathered around, listening, and I think he was just asking her what she felt like, and she said she was in a lot of pain, and that the bandage was too tight, and he checked the bandage, and I think he just asked about your general health, more or less, and that they'd get you out and you'd be fine and all those kind of things. It felt like it went for a long time, but it didn't. And it wasn't long before he was radioing for the helicopter to come back and saying, no, you've all got to help me pick her up, and you do this and you carry that, and we're going back over here. And then once he actually got it down into the right place and was getting the harness on her and everything, he really told us to go away in the most nicest possible way that you could. So we did. We just walked a distance away and we were still watching, and yes, and it wasn't long before the helicopter was back, and within seconds they were waving goodbye to us.
Do you have any perspective on that part of the rescue, Joyce, of the carrying and then the suddenly being winched up into the helicopter?
So when they got me down just before we got out, I knew that everything was going to be under control. And also just to note that my bag had to be carried out by other people, that I wasn't going to take my actual pack with me. That was something that you'd never think of. And I've now thought about repacking packs in case any other emergency happens, that you've got to realise that, someone else could be carrying your pack. So just to be quite considerate of that as well.
So would there have been opportunity to take just like, your phone and a wallet kind of thing, or you weren't able to take anything with you?
No, I had my phone. So my clothes, I always carry my phone on me. So that was part of me. So that was fine. But no, I couldn't carry anything else. So everything else was left.
It feels like this rushing wind kind of rushes in and picks up Joyce and takes her away again, and she's flying to hospital. What happens when you get to hospital, and how are your symptoms? So this pain level that you had?
Yeah. So they gave me a nauseous tablet, like to help with nausea on the helicopter flight. I was still in a lot of pain. And I remember coming down going, can I please take this bandage off? Like it's really, I can't, it was really getting worse and worse, the pain. And they just looked at me and said, we've got to do the first blood test first before we can do anything.
How long did that then take for you? What happened next?
Yeah, I just remember waiting. It was a waiting game for the blood results to come through, and it did take a while. But not long enough to, it wasn't that long, but when you're waiting and you're sitting there, like even 10 minutes will feel like a long time.
A long time. And so what were the results? What happened?
I'm very fortunate. I was cleared. It was a dry bite.
Okay.
So, once they did the test, there was no signs of envenomation.
But you had 2 very clear fang marks.
Yes.
On your ankle.
Yes.
Question I've got, were you wearing gaiters?
Really good question. I was literally wearing ankle socks, and I was wearing my trail runners and shorts and a T-shirt. So clearly not prepared, to go out on a bushwalk.
Has that changed what you wear in the bush these days?
I do now carry my gaiters with me.
Do you have a personal story about an incident or time during an outdoor trip when something didn't quite go to plan? Maybe you got lost, injured, let down by some gear, or something else. Look, honestly, it can happen to any of us at any time, regardless of how experienced we are. And it's by sharing these stories that we can all learn and help avoid them in the future. If that's you, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email to rescued@lotsoffreshair.com. That's LOTSA freshair.com. So, Joyce, does that mean that you made it home that night?
No. So the way the hospital system works is they keep you under surveillance overnight and they redo the blood tests. So you get another round of blood tests, and then they even make you the next morning, once you're cleared to go, they even suggest that you go and do another set of blood tests 7 days later.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when did you get home?
I got home on Sunday morning.
Talk to me about how it felt when that bandage came off.
I think knowing that I wasn't envenomated, or there was no signs of me going to be dying. It was a good feeling, I have to say. I was very thankful and relieved. It's a sign of, okay, well, it's not my time yet.
When you realised you weren't envenomated and that sense of relief, how did you feel that physically, or how would you express what that felt like?
That could have been a completely different story. That could have been a completely different scenario. That could have been, I would have, imagine me not having the support, not having those 4 other people, not having my snake bandages, not being a dry bite, not having reception, so many things. I've done quite a few walks after that incident.
Yeah.
We've yet to get back to solitary, though.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things in place to get you from the mountain into hospital. Did you get a bill for that, or is it covered by Medicare, or what? How does that work, Joyce? What happened?
I actually got a bill posted from New South Wales Ambulance, and the question said that if I've got health care or health cover that covers it, I then have to let them know or tick a box or something. I didn't know if I was covered or not at the time, and I had to go back and call my health insurance to find out if I did have that ambulance cover.
Because who knew helicopters were covered by ambulances?
No, because I'm thinking a lot of people would think that ambulances are covered in Medicare and, you know, the helicopter is a big flying ambulance, I guess is one way to think of it, but it's not covered at all.
I was actually expecting it to be a lot more, but I was quite surprised. It was around 1,600, close to the 1,700 mark.
Well, that's actually cheaper than I expected. That sounds pretty good. So it's a really good learning for us then to go and check that either if we don't have private health cover, to go and check and even just take out ambulance cover. So did you think or find yourself feeling differently when you went back into the bush for the first time after?
I remember wearing long pants and gaiters.
Long pants and gaiters, because even long pants, what's great about them is, and not leggings, but loose long pants, is you've created this lovely air gap between your skin and the pants. And, you know, snake fangs are really tiny and that air gap can be nice and wide. So I've got a question for you, Frances. So after the whirlwind of the activity, that sounds like it all took place within, you're saying, like an hour from bite to flying away. When the four of you were left standing there, what was happening in the group and happening amongst you all? And for yourself, what were you going through at that point?
You sort of get this level of anxiety that you're actually keeping under wraps because you just want everything to go well. But it was once again Luke who said, would it be okay if we all just stopped? So we actually went back to the end to where the lookout was and sat down and just had a little bit of a breather and, you know, wondering if Joyce was okay and sort of chatting about it. And, that was good to do that. And then, of course, we had the walk back. So then you could sort of walk that off all the way home. And I think before we even got back, Joyce may have sent us a text message to say she was okay, because that was a couple of hours later and we hadn't actually gotten back out by then.
Mm.
So that was good. So everyone could go home knowing that she was fine.
And divvy up the goods from her pack. And
yes.
Yes.
Poor Luke and Hugh had to carry. I owe them one now. Got to carry.
How do you reflect on it now? And you talked a little bit about that then, Joyce, but now 12 months on, how do you reflect on the whole experience, and has it changed you in any way, whether that be your approach to things or your experiences in the bush?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what really struck me is that being prepared is is key. And walking with people that you know will care for you and be a support for you is another key. And also to note that everyone can be vulnerable. You don't know what could happen anywhere in any place, and you've just got to be ready. You've got to mitigate the risks as much as you can, so that you've done everything you can if something does go wrong.
And what about you, Frances?
No, I don't think it's changed my approach to anything. It's made me realise how important your group is, how important the people are. And even though, you know, you might not know the people that you're going out with that well, but I think, you know, because it's the Sydney Bushwalkers is such a community that you kind of, you would take for granted that they would be able to handle a situation. And having come a cropper myself a few times, it's always very comforting to have people around you that you know want the best for you and want to help you as much as possible.
That was a question, Joyce. So you said you just finished a first aid course.
Yeah.
Was that a standard adult first aid, or was that something different? Or
in my workplace, first aid training is necessary, so it's something that we have to renew regularly.
And it's that sense that you're not necessarily doing this training to treat yourself, yes, but it's to offer that as a, I guess it's a kind of a gift that you offer to the people that you adventure with. You take this knowledge that you can then, roll out when you need to.
And we saw that in Jo that day. She had just recently had her training, and she just literally, the doctor said, whoever did your bandage did an amazing job.
Yeah, because there's lots of different types of courses. Do you know if Jo had done a remote course?
Yeah, it was the remote one that she'd done.
And I think for people like us who do spend a lot of time out in wild places, any first aid training is great, but I think if you do adventure, rugged and remote regularly, like you say, most weekends, and especially with people that you care about, to take that extra level of training and to look at how you look after people, because an hour was a really short time, but imagine if you had to care for someone for an overnight, or maybe even more than just one day. And I think that's where those extra remote area courses or those extra level of training can really help sort of that longer term patient care, which is really critical. So it's now a year since this happened up on Mount Solitary. How do you reflect back on it now?
So I think the thing that's foremost in my mind, even when we go on walks that we're familiar with, is that you can never underestimate the Australian bush. It's a wonderful place, just so very unforgiving, and just being prepared, I think.
And I guess it's that you don't know what you don't know. And if you're coming from overseas, if you're coming from a different environment where, it's tracks and they're wide, or, snakes just aren't something you think about, well, you're not going to think about it.
No, but you don't think it's going to happen. Nobody thinks it's going to happen to you. You're not. And I love that phrase, but you don't know what you don't know, because that's exactly it. I hope you learn from your experiences and add things to your arsenal when things go wrong. So I might even put another snake bandage in. I didn't know that one wasn't enough.
Well, that sounds like a great place to wrap it up. So Frances and Joyce, thank you so much for your time. There's so many great learnings for us all from that, not just about, how to prepare and what to take, but also expectations of what to expect if something does happen, or if we need to call for help.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this powerful story, or one of the many others from my super generous guests, you can help more people connect and hear these valuable lessons simply by leaving a 5-star review. And why not even click that little bitty share button on your podcast app and help your outdoorsy mates find it too. The Rescued podcast is produced on the unceded lands of the Gundungurra people of the Blue Mountains of New South Wales. I pay my respects to the elders past and present and acknowledge their enduring connection to and care for country. Special thanks to our sponsors, Paddy Palin. This has been a Lots of Fresh Air production.